I'm Gabby Saunders. I'm the Research Area Manager for Social Hearing Science here at Erikholm Research Centre. Social hearing science is how the person with hearing loss, their family and friends, and the hearing healthcare provider function in the real world. How can we use and understand social connectedness, social engagement, and quality of life to understand the impacts of hearing loss? And how can we address the impacts of hearing loss based upon what we find? How can we increase awareness about hearing and hearing loss and hearing healthcare? We know it's critical that the hearing care provider and the patient have a good relationship, because there's a lot of data out there that show that patients who trust their providers, who believe that their provider cares about them, and with whom they have good communication interactions, have much better outcomes and are much more likely to adhere to the recommended intervention than patients that lack that rapport and relationship with their communication providers. So from the perspective of the hearing impaired person, what social hearing science wants to do is understand whether or not the patient is engaged and connected with the social world. From the perspective of the patient's family and friends, we know that often family and friends feel a lot of under pressure and stress because they have to in many ways support the hearing impaired person. So how can we best support them? And then finally, the hearing care provider really is Oticon's critical link between us and the end user, the person with hearing loss. It's really important, in my opinion, that the hearing care providers buy in to what we are recommending in terms of hearing instruments and auditory rehabilitation. And therefore, we need to make sure that everything we do is accepted and understood by them. People take turns. People are communicating back and forth. Unfortunately, with hearing loss, it's often the case that the hearing impaired individual may be in the social context, but they're not actually taking part in the conversation. Conversely, some hearing impaired people tend to take over the conversation and don't allow others to chime in. And so we want to look into how we can measure turn taking and what might indicate healthy turn taking, and use that to better understand what goes on in social communication. Another aspect that's important for us to look at is well-being and happiness in the context of quality of life. Unfortunately, when you look at the standard quality of life measures, they are insensitive to the impacts of hearing loss, primarily, I think, because they are targeted towards physical ailments. And therefore, the implication is hearing loss doesn't affect quality of life, but we know full well it does. So we are trying to find some other ways that we can kind of measure that global quality of well-being that are new, and that address the kind of social impacts that hearing loss has. How confident are you in the communications that you are having? Communication self-efficacy. It's something that nobody has looked at before, and I think that any clinician, when they're testing somebody on a repeat back these sentences task, knows full well that there is a difference in the way somebody responds when they know the answer that they're going to give versus when they are struggling their way through a sentence. There is a little bit of data out there that suggests that some people realistically have made up their mind that they don't like hearing aids before they've even tried them. Clearly, these people are very different to the individuals who try hearing aids and maybe come to this decision that they don't like them, but they really haven't made up their mind in advance. How can we differentiate these people up front, number one? But also, is there a particular sweet spot in time where we can intervene effectively to change those people who are genuinely on the fence about making their decision? And if we can identify that, what also should we be telling them? How should we be helping them through that decision-making progress so they make a decision to help themselves by potentially getting hearing aids? We're actually talking to clinicians and finding out from them what they want from us in terms of, for example, data that the hearing aids collect. What data would they use? How would they use it? What information should we be giving them? And secondly, we're trying to enhance the communication that they have with their patients. One tool we're using for that is something I'm calling photo sharing. The clinician asks the patient to bring in some of their own photographs that depict certain situations. It might be a situation where the hearing aids are really working well for them. It might be a situation where they're having particular difficulties. And then the clinician can use those photos to assist with the auditory rehabilitation and counseling. And we're trying to find out how we can best implement that in clinical practice. The research we do in social hearing science is really a combination of clinical audiology and social psychology. So the people who work in the area with me are individuals who have a background in audiology, who really understand the issues associated with hearing loss and social connectedness and isolation. They also understand the value of auditory rehabilitation for individuals with hearing loss. Our ultimate goal in social hearing science is to improve the quality of life for people with hearing loss and their families. And we want to do this by developing behavior-based interventions that can be used in partnership with the hearing care providers. So the goal is to eventually help people make the decision to help themselves.